So I'm just going to give an overview about what EPRI's been working on related to pollinators. This covers a lot of work that we've moved forward in the last year. I'll just kind of get to it here. So to highlight EPRI's focus on pollinators, I just took a screenshot of our corporate homepage yesterday, and I didn't know it was up there until I saw it myself. Right in the middle here, it looks at promoting pollinators right along with kind of our big initiatives at EPRI, which right now is national electrification work. So EPRI really is committed to this work. We see it as very important for the industry and for communities and for human health and well-being. So this isn't just one little project or one initiative. EPRI as an organization and corporation is really committed to doing research on this over the long haul. And we have a website that specifically catalogs all the pollinator projects and efforts. So anything that you see or hear today, you can go to this website and pull more detailed information because there's really too much to cover in this kind of brief update. Just as a flag and a shout out, we have a new employee starting this week and she's onboarding. I believe some of you know Ashley Bennett potentially already. She's pretty well known in the pollinator and bee science space. She has a PhD in entomology and has an incredible amount of experience on the academic side at the University of Illinois, Michigan State, and she was the IPM manager at New Mexico State University recently, and she's onboarding to EPRI this week. So just as another kind of testament to our further investment in this type of work and research. So we have a large collaborative initiative as well as deeper specific work that we do at the field. Tim just presented an example of a project that we do at companies, each company. EPRI as an organization, our membership represents about 90% of all electricity generated in North America. So if you work with an electric power company, chances are that they work with EPRI is pretty high. We also work internationally. So the Power-in-Pollinator initiative is one of our efforts, and I saw that Iris also is using the honeycomb. I know others too, so we're going to have to update our creativity on that one. It looked cute last year. This year, I don't know. But it kind of, points to several of our projects that we're doing within this larger collaborative group. And these are the companies that really were the initiating companies for Power-in-Pollinator initiative, which is already the largest collaboration in North America that focuses specifically for electric power companies and their issues around pollinators. And we have another 4 companies that are joining already next year. So we anticipate the group growing over the next, I really think over the next 5 years or so, it's going to continue to pick up a lot of momentum there. We do a set of work that hits on both sort of this public access, public communication, easily accessible resources to sort of ramp up on pollinators and what the connection is with power companies. It's something you guys are well aware of, but that we end up having to explain quite a lot. What is the nexus here between bees and power companies? So we've developed a set of kind of this easy access resources, even for executives. So your SVP, I got a call from a senior vice president at a big power company last week asking me to explain what is pollination, what does it mean, why is it important for them? So these type of resources are really important. And along those lines, we have hosted a pollinator mixer for the last several meetings at a community on ecosystem services is a really heavily attended meeting, mostly from the academic side, not so much on the practitioner kind of business side. But we are hosting a conversation again there this coming December along these lines of sort of getting this public communication word out. And we facilitated the industry participation in National Pollinator Week for communication. And we also collected information from the companies on the success of National Pollinator Week on how many people did they reach. So our metric here, because it's a communication goal, is our metric is a communication metric, which is the number of people reached versus, you know, how many species are out there or something like that. So, and then within the number of people reached, that became a big spread of sub-metrics. How many impressions do you get on Twitter? How many engagements did you get on LinkedIn? How many new followers? How many did you actively connect with versus passively send an email to? So there's a spread of analysis on metrics. I've worked on metrics for a long time, so sometimes I get in the weeds on it too much. But we wanted to communicate clearly how many people were actively reached versus passively reached. And as a group, I see my photo here. This is Bonneville Power Administration. They're incredible on this topic. It's covering my number for total reached. Our estimate right now is, as a collaborative group, we reached 500,000 people during Pollinator Week. We collaborated with Pollinator Partnership on that, which we really appreciate the collaboration with Pollinator Partnership, so shout out to them. Very important, and we're going to continue to do this. So we provided resources for all the EPRI members, and helped them brainstorm what were they doing. So a lot of them did plant sales and really kind of human touching type stuff. I taught a class. This is me with a bee box teaching a class at a Boy Scout camp. We hit 150 scouts in 1 week and their 150 parents. So that's would be considered active engagement. And that was my logic for the kids around bees and you. So getting in now to details of our deeper technical work. So this is another area of developing tools and resources for the industry. This is a wild bee GIS prioritization tool that we've been working on and vetting for the last 9 to 12 months. And it basically is what you heard earlier today on why do you need a GIS tool to hone in on where you want to do projects. It actually ends up getting quite a bit more complicated than just that. For GIS, you have to understand your scientifically defensible proxies for how you pull in a GIS layer. Is it just soil type? Is it fly distance? Is it slope, proximity to waterways? What is it exactly that you need to pull in there to be saying you're good habitat for wild bees? And it's different for honeybees and wild bees and so forth. So it's actually pretty complicated when you want to put out something that can be peer reviewed, and that's where EPRI works. So we performed a literature review. We interviewed experts that pulled up from the lit review and connected with people who haven't published, but kind of their name is on the street. We had conversations with EPRI members about their needs, and we're pilot testing. We're starting in 2018 to go through 2019, and our pilot tester, as of just a couple days ago, will be NYPA, New York Power Authority. We could do 1 pilot tester because this is a really extensive project. These are interviews that we conducted, so you sort of get the sense of these are some of the key folks that have already done GIS mapping and pollinator work and are academically the experts as well as on a practitioner side, and their work as a collective has been field verified. So we're developing confidence in the approach that we're using for this. And these are some of the other models that we have done pretty thorough testing and investigations of in order to build up the EPRI tool. And we're working on kind of putting the user skin on this now. Some of these tools can be hard to use or not accessible to everybody. So we want to publish something that is really usable for a land manager. And this is building on about a decade of work. We have a project called Strategic Landholding Analysis. Basically the same concept. You look at all your corporate land holdings and you prioritize them for your needs around natural resources. So we have a decade of experience doing this GIS prioritization and pulling in all the data layers and now applying it for bees. So theoretically, it's easy given that we have so much experience and success doing it, but for bees it's tricky. It's not just a carryover. You have to really be thoughtful and think about the science and the analysis that goes into it. So we expect this GIS tool we would like to publish a tool that folks can use maybe in 2019 after we do the pilot test in Q1 and Q2, but we'll certainly provide updates as that develops. Okay, in the next project, Pollinator Metrics Database, we've been working on this again for about 9 to 10 months with Xerces Society. We're putting together a reference database of all pollinator metrics that you can use to sort for your purpose. Do you want to make a scorecard? Do you want to do field testing? Do you want to know what's really going on your plots? So you can look at our database and do filtering on it. Right now it has 100+ metrics. So I'm giving you an idea of this. It's going to be published in January. Over 100 metrics, 60 citations from the journals and NRCS and Xerces and lots of other organizations. And then we map the metric to its purpose. So is it pollinator habitat? Are you looking at bee abundance, butterfly abundance, or is it diversity? Those are different issues and different metrics that you kind of want to be thinking about depending on what your need for the metric is. We also have metrics for communicating with stakeholders or planning or corporate strategy development. And we map the metric to how hard it is to use. What's the human level of effort to use the metric? Some of them are really easy. Some of them you have to get in the field and do stem counts. So it's really this continuum. And so when I say A to Z metric mapping on the database, it literally is column A through Z are the categories that you can use to look at the metrics. And it also looks at them by which metrics are being used in which states. So if you're in Chicago, if you're in Illinois, you can look at what metrics are already used in Illinois. So we're developing that. It should be released in January of 2019. And we already have 3 EPRI members that wanted to use the draft database because they had their corporate pollinator strategy that was due last week. So we released it to a few of them so they could pick their metrics for their corporate reporting. So Monarch, this is another big project. As Iris and you guys are working on the CCAA for Monarch, we have been really busy working on our own Monarch research. We're asking some questions around clarifying the nexus between power companies and Monarch conservation. What are the causes? How can power companies help? And thinking about all of their corporate assets within power companies, which conservation actions actually apply? And of those actions, which ones will have the biggest impact based on an estimate of the number of acres? So solar fields are different than rights of ways. Your substations are different than your power plant sites. So we've taken all of the land holding types for power companies and looked at what are the conservation actions that make sense for your different land holding type. Fish and Wildlife Service, I know, is waiting for the report from EPRI, and we anticipate the report informing monarch conservation whether the monarch is listed or not. It's an important species whether it's listed or not. And this report will allow power companies to look at what conservation actions they can do no matter the federal status. So we've worked with Xerces. We completed an expert survey with scientific experts to understand theoretically the conservation actions most important. And we've completed an upremember survey to understand the realities of these conservation actions and the extent that they're already implemented. We believe this is the most extensive survey that's ever been attempted on Monarch for the electric power industry, and we anticipate the results being really impactful and informative. And so we're being very careful on the analysis and the results of this. Final draft of the report will be out in January with it published in February. We have a 75% response rate to the upremember survey as of today. Okay, and we got a new grant as of last week, an internal EPRI technology innovation grant that looks again at Monarch. So adding to the set of tools to assess monarch habitat, we have been funded to use landscape scale imagery to identify milkweed, and machine learning to differentiate all this mammoth amount of data to look at imagery data to say where is the likely habitat for monarch based on milkweed when you're taking the images at the right time at milkweed blooming period. So we'll analyze the imagery, we'll train the software through machine learning, apply algorithms and pilot test with power companies and validate it in 2020 and release the software in 2021. This should add tremendously to this kind of vacuum, I think, of really understanding where this habitat actually is and hopefully ease the burden of all landholders and kind of trying to grab their information out there with actual imagery data, not just assumptions between land cover type and monarch habitat. We have our field studies continuing with NYPA, First Energy, and Southern Company. And a new project with Southern Company, Georgia DOT, Ray Foundation, and EPRI, the first pollinator-friendly right-of-way solar project in Georgia. So there's a press release in the Triple Pundit on that one that just came out. And save the date for our next workshop. We'll focus on human well-being, pollinators, and power company nexus. It will be in Sacramento, March 27th, 28th. And there will be a full field trip day that we're collaborating with Xerces to host. We're going to look at the almond grows, also with California Almond Board, collaborating with California Almond Board on this workshop as well. We'll look at managed bees. So all those honeybees will just be done with their almond pollination service when we're there for the workshop. So we have some managed bee folks and bee brokers that'll be at the workshop with us. We'll look at a monarch site and probably a field visit to a right-of-way, power company right-of-way. So there'll be a full day field trip, and then we'll dive into a really awesome full workshop day with UC Davis, University of Minnesota, USDA, EPA, are all planning to come and confirmed as speakers already. So you can watch for more information on that. To really focus on pollinators and the connection to human well-being and the nexus for what power companies can do with it. And a shout out on the back, in the table in the back, I have a one-pager for the metrics project and a one-pager for the GIS project. So if you want to read more about that. And then as of just this month, we have a new book, and here's a card for it, called Sustainable Electricity 2. I was an editor and a contributing author. It gets into a conversation about what happens when you can't win on the 3 pillars of sustainability, and has chapters from Google, Stanford, and impact investor, power companies, and so forth. So the print version will be out in November. So there's a little card on that. And the forward is written by a kid, Generation Z, a 12-year-old, for the book. And that's it.
Do you want to take a question or two?
Yeah, of course, sure. Yeah.
Any questions?
Okay, Jessica, just a quick follow-up on the milkweed imagery project. Could you say something about like how much that costs, let's say, compared to like LiDAR, and then maybe is it based on like aerial photography or certain kind of technology? Just maybe you can provide just a little bit more information, because that sounds like really exciting technology.
Yeah, it would be pretty cool, and that's a technology innovation grant. So those grants are given for projects that are kind of really out there on the cutting edge and high risk for failure or high risk for success. So hopefully it doesn't cost you anymore. We want to use imagery. The reality is that there's nearly real-time imagery data taken of the Earth almost daily right now. And it goes down to the 0.3 to 3 meter pixel, which is high resolution type of data. So the idea is that we're pulling on from those images that are taken anyway and trying to, you have to kind of scrub it for the right timing, you know, for milkweed. And then it's a big project. Then you have to take the UV reflectivity off the landscape and pull it into the machine learning. And then you have to field test, did it actually get milkweed? Did it get something else? And all of that. But hopefully it's using data that's already out there. I know power companies have tons of LiDAR. Well, some have LiDAR data. So we may be calling upremembers and saying, hey, you know, what do you think about, you know, can we pilot test some of your LiDAR data or something like that? But the idea is it doesn't cost you any more. Yeah. Yeah.
I was just wondering if some of this will be available to people who are not members of EPRI, if, you know, some of it will be published.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk to you about the GIS thing too. So everything that we publish is available to EPRI is a nonprofit research organization. So it all goes in the public domain. The tricky question is it free or does it cost you $30,000 or whatever? So you're asking, will it be free? Yes. So some of this stuff will be free and some of it will have a fee associated with it. I mean, the reality is that I showed you the logos of the funders and they legitimately, you know, get access to everything because they funded it. So, but some of them we try to put things as a free post when we can. And if we can make the justification that there's a strong public benefit, that allows us to do a free post. So like if I get an email from Fish and Wildlife or a DOT that says, hey, I'd really benefit from seeing that, and I say, hey, you know, this organization, you know, really would like to see this, and usually we can justify free post for things, yeah.
Okay, thank you.